The scene introduces his boldness, ingenuity, and the film's trademark mix of humor and danger, such as outrunning an enormous rolling boulder. Back in the U.S., Army intelligence. In Washington, D.C., Army intelligence explains the mythic power of the Ark, and Indy agrees to locate the headpiece to the Staff of Ra, essential for finding the Ark's hidden location. Marion Ravenwood. Indy's investigation leads him to Marion, tough tavern owner, and his former flame in Cairo. Their chemistry and banter add emotional stakes and a romantic dimension to the plot. Tanis in the map room. After recovering the headpiece, Indy and Sallah decipher its clues to locate the Ark's resting place in Tanis, a desert archaeological site, and a memorable scene where a shaft of sunlight reveals the exact location. Belloq and the Nazis. The rival archaeologist, René Belloq, collaborates with Nazis to steal the Ark, leaving Indy and Marion to escape a pit of snakes and other perils. U-boat sequence and the Ark's power. The Nazis seize the Ark aboard a U-boat. Indy infiltrates their base, but ultimately relinquishes the Ark to them. The climax unfolds during a ceremonial opening of the Ark, only to unleash supernatural forces that obliterate the Nazis while sparing Indy and Marion, who keep their eyes closed in reverence. Characters and performances. Indiana Jones. Indy is both wit and grit, an intellectual archaeologist and a rugged adventurer. Harrison Ford's performance perfectly balances humor and physicality, solidifying him as an action star of the era. Marion Ravenwood. Marion, portrayed by Karen Allen, is tough, resourceful, and emotionally complex, more than a typical love interest. Her dynamic with Indy provides both humor and heart, especially as they clash and reconnect throughout the film. René Belloq and supporting cast. Paul Freeman's Belloq serves as Indy's intellectual rival, cultured yet unscrupulous. The other supporting characters, such as broad-shouldered Sallah and scholarly Marcus Brody, add richness and warmth to the ensemble. Music. John Williams' iconic score. Music plays a vital role in Raiders. John Williams, Spielberg's longtime collaborator, crafted a score that became almost as iconic as the film itself. The Raiders March, the Indiana Jones theme, often called the Raiders March, underscores Indy's heroism and adventure. With bold brass and memorable motifs, it evokes classic swashbuckling adventure while feeling fresh and cinematic. Williams created separate pieces for the main theme and the bridge, later combining them into the final version used in the film. Romantic and character themes. Williams also composed a sweeping romantic theme for Indy and Marion, inspired by classic scores like Now Voyage, 1942. The interplay between lighter heroic music and darker motifs representing the Nazis adds emotional and narrative texture. Music's narrative function. Music enhances action, amplifies mystery in scenes like The Well of Souls, and underscores emotional beats, helping transform Raiders from a series of stunts into a cohesive cinematic experience. For example, the dramatic build-up in the Tanis map room scene accentuates the joy of discovery and historical wonder. The soundtrack was nominated for Best Original Score at the Academy Awards. Behind the scenes, making the movie development and script. Lucas had the idea for an adventure that captured the spirit of old serials years before Star Wars. Originally, the character's surname was Smith, but it was changed to Jones early in production, partly because Smith seemed too generic. Lucas and Spielberg had ideas for major action sequences, but to knit them into a narrative, they hired Lawrence Kasdan to write the screenplay. Kasdan, Spielberg, and Lucas spent several days in intensive discussions mapping out the plot before Kasdan completed the script. Some ideas were later used in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, such as the minecart chase and a giant gong sequence. Casting choices and what might have been. Although Harrison Ford became iconic as Indy, He wasn't the first choice. Tom Selleck tested for the role and was a strong contender, but scheduling conflicts with Magnum PI forced him to step away. Other actors such as Peter Coyote and Tim Matheson also tested. Spielberg initially wanted Danny DeVito as Sallah, but DeVito was unavailable due to his TV commitments. Karen Allen wasn't the only contender for Marion. Sean Young also tested. Production challenges. Filming took place in multiple locations, including studios in Elstree, La Rochelle, France, Hawaii, and Tunisia. Working conditions were often grueling. Crew members came down with food poisoning in North Africa, and Spielberg later remarked that shooting in Tunisia was among his most difficult experiences. The infamous Well of Souls sequence used thousands of real snakes, reportedly about 7,000, which created both fear and logistical headaches. A famous example of on-set ingenuity was the switch from a planned lengthy sword fight to a simple gunshot when Harrison Ford, suffering from dysentery, suggested Indy just shoot the swordsman. Spielberg agreed, creating one of the film's most memorable and humorous moments. Technical effects and stunts. The film relied heavily on practical effects and stunts, with most action sequences performed live rather than relying on optical effects. The truck chase involved specially built vehicles and real stunt performers, and a fiberglass boulder was used for the temple escape sequence. Infex Legend, Industrial Light and Magic. ILM crafted the supernatural sequences at the climax, blending puppets, optical effects, and creative camera techniques to bring the Ark's unleashed powers to terrifying life. Budget, box office, and financial impact. Raiders of the Lost Ark was produced on a relatively modest budget, about $18, $20 million. Upon release on June 12, 1981, the film became an enormous financial success. It opened at number 1 in the U.S. and eventually grossed around $389 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of 1981. Given its low production costs, its worldwide box office made it extraordinarily profitable and cemented Spielberg and Lucas's reputations as filmmakers who could deliver both critical acclaim and commercial success. The film also had a long afterlife in home video sales, re-releases, and merchandise, from action figures to video games, contributing significantly to its enduring profitability. Awards and critical reception. Critically, Raiders was widely praised for its direction, pacing, wit, action sequences, and acting. It holds a high approval rating among critics and audiences alike. At the Academy Awards, Raiders of the Lost Ark received nominations including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Score. It won 4 Oscars: Best Film Editing, Best Sound, Best Visual Effects, and Best Production Design, plus a Special Achievement Award for Sound Effects Editing. It also collected multiple genre accolades, including 7 Saturn Awards, highlighting its achievements in fantasy filmmaking. Legacy and influence. Raiders of the Lost Ark reinvented the adventure genre for modern audiences. Its blend of humor, action, exotic locales, and charismatic characters influenced countless films, TV shows, and video games in subsequent decades. The film's success launched the Indiana Jones franchise, which includes multiple sequels, a television series, novels, comics, and theme park attractions. The movie's enduring popularity also led to its preservation in the U.S. Library of Congress National Film Registry, a testament to its cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance. Conclusion. Enduring adventure, Raiders of the Lost Ark remains a high watermark of action filmmaking. Its compelling narrative, unforgettable characters, masterful music by John Williams, and behind-the-scenes innovations have left an indelible mark on cinema. A combination of Lucas's love for old adventure serials, Spielberg's directorial craftsmanship, and Kasdan's knack for story structure resulted in a work that transcends its influences. Its success, both commercially and critically, helped define blockbuster adventure for generations, inspiring filmmakers and enthralling audiences for over 4 decades. Scene-by-scene analysis, the Paramount logo to the jungle temple. The film famously opens with the Paramount Mountain dissolving into a real mountain in Peru. This visual joke immediately establishes tone, cinematic myth, merging into reality. Spielberg signals that this will be playful but grand. The jungle trek. We need Indiana Jones before we see his face. The camera stays behind him, hat, whip, silhouette. Spielberg builds mystique through withholding. When Indy finally steps forward into light, we get the reveal. Rugged, competent, calm. Music, John Williams uses restrained suspense here rather than the full heroic theme. Low strings and rhythmic pulses build tension. The Raiders' March is deliberately withheld. Williams understands that theme earns its entrance. It's not background wallpaper. The Temple of the Golden Idol. The temple sequence is a miniature film. It establishes Indy as skilled but not invincible. The dangers of archaeology, the film's pulp serial roots, the theme of greed versus reverence. The iconic boulder chase works not only because of spectacle, but because it follows rising tension. Spikes, darts, betrayal by Satipo, idol swap, collapsing temple. Music's role. Williams escalates orchestration with each layer of danger. Brass punctuates moments of triumph. Frantic strings underscore escape. Importantly, the Raiders' March makes a brief heroic appearance, but it's cut short when Belloq appears. Belloq's introduction, René Belloq, arrives not as a brute, but as a refined intellectual. He is Indy's mirror, another archaeologist, but morally hollow. The music drops into darker tonalities. Williams introduces ominous harmonic movement associated with Nazi power and mystical corruption. The jungle sequence ends with Indy barely surviving, not triumphant, but humiliated. This is key. He is heroic, but he fails often. The classroom and call to adventure. Cut to Marshall College. The contrast is deliberate. Jungle chaos, 12 academic calm. Adventurer, 12 professor. This duality is central to Indy's character. He lives in 2 worlds. When Army intelligence explains the Ark of the Covenant, the tone shifts into mythic territory. Music. Williams introduces mystical choral textures and solemn brass. The Ark's theme is reverent and ancient. It sounds biblical, weighty, almost sacred. This musical identity sets the Ark apart from treasure, its divine power. The Ark is not just a MacGuffin, it's a theological object that matters in the climax. Marion Ravenwood, Nepal sequence. Indy tracks the headpiece to Marion in Nepal. This section does 3 things. Introduces emotional baggage, grounds the film in romantic tension, expands the world geographically. Marion's drinking contest introduction immediately defines her as tough and self-reliant. She is not a passive damsel. Their reunion crackles with unresolved hurt. The line "I was a child" reveals uncomfortable backstory. The film flirts with moral ambiguity in Indy's past. The bar fight. The bar burns. Nazis attack. Marion fights back fiercely. The action escalates emotionally because it's personal now. Music. Williams blends romantic melody fragments with aggressive action scoring. The Raiders' March is still restrained. It emerges more fully once Marion and Indy reunite as partners. The Nepal sequence transitions the film from mythic quest into relationship-driven adventure. Cairo. Expanding scope. Cairo feels alive. Markets, baskets, swordsmen, rooftops. Spielberg uses crowd choreography brilliantly. The sword versus gun moment, originally scripted as an elaborate fight. Harrison Ford, ill with dysentery, suggested simply shooting the swordsman. Spielberg agreed. The result, a burst of humor. Character shorthand. Indy is pragmatic. Perfect pacing. Music, Williams cuts abruptly with the gunshot, allowing silence and audience laughter. Sometimes the absence of music is the strongest choice. The map room, spiritual awe. This is one of the film's most beautiful scenes. Indy lowers the staff of Ra. Sunlight pierces the chamber. The beam reveals the Ark's location. This scene embodies the joy of discovery. Music. Williams swells into full orchestral majesty. The Ark theme blends with triumphant harmony. It feels like a religious revelation. Notice, this is the only moment in the film where archaeology feels purely noble. The well of souls, the Ark is uncovered, but immediately the tone darkens. Snakes fill the chamber. Indy's fear is revealed. Why'd it have to be snakes? The Ark's presence is heavy, ominous. Music, low brass and unsettling harmonies dominate. Williams suggests that disturbing sacred ground carries consequences. The supernatural undercurrent becomes more pronounced here. The truck chase, pure kinetic cinema. Arguably the film's greatest action set piece. Indy pursues the truck transporting the Ark. He's shot, dragged, climbs under the vehicle, fights atop it. Spielberg shoots much of it with wide lenses and practical stunts, grounding the danger in physical reality. Music here, the Raiders' March, is fully unleashed. Bold brass, rhythmic propulsion, it becomes the sound of forward momentum. This is where Indy earns full mythic hero status. The U-boat and island finale. The Nazis capture the Ark again. Indy sneaks aboard a submarine, an almost silent stretch. Then comes the climax. Belloq conducts a ritual to open the Ark. The music shifts from solemn religious tones to chaotic supernatural terror. Ghostly spirits emerge, beautiful then monstrous. Nazis melt, heads explode, bodies burn. Indy and Marion survive because they close their eyes. This ending reinforces the film's theme. Sacred power cannot be weaponized. The Ark punishes arrogance. Music, Williams uses choir, dissonance, and swelling crescendos. The Ark theme becomes terrifying. It transforms from reverence into wrath. The warehouse ending. The Ark is boxed and stored in a vast government warehouse. This ironic ending suggests bureaucracy buries history. The supernatural remains hidden. The adventure continues unseen. Williams closes with heroic warmth, but slightly subdued. The mystery persists. Character studies. Indiana Jones, the reluctant myth. Indy is compelling because he is intelligent but impulsive, brave but fearful, heroic but flawed. He is repeatedly beaten, shot, dragged, buried alive. Unlike invincible heroes, Indy survives through endurance and improvisation. His defining traits: curiosity, respect for history. Moral line: he opposes Nazis, not just politically, but ethically. His arc in Raiders is subtle. He begins chasing an artifact. He ends respecting its spiritual power. Marion Ravenwood, emotional anchor. Marion is not ornamental. She drinks like a warrior, fights with frying pans, punches Nazis, endures imprisonment without breaking. She gives Indy emotional stakes. Without her, the film risks being episodic spectacle. With her, it gains heart. René Belloq, the shadow self. Belloq represents what Indy could become. He tells Indy, "You and I are very much alike, but the difference is faith and respect." Belloq sees artifacts as leverage for power. Indy sees them as historical truth. The Ark destroys Belloq because he treats it as a tool. Music deep dive, how the score shapes the film. John Williams' score is essential to Raiders' identity. The Raiders' marked structure, bold brass fanfare, rhythmic propulsion, noble secondary melody. Williams originally wrote 2 themes, and Spielberg couldn't choose, so Williams combined them. This theme signals heroism, elevates action, provides emotional payoff. Without it, the truck chase would feel exciting. With it, it feels legendary. The Ark theme, slow, reverent, hymn-like, built on minor tonal shifts, choral textures, sustained brass. It conveys ancient power. As the film progresses, this theme mutates: reverence, mystery, terror. Marion's theme, sweeping, romantic, old Hollywood in style. Williams consciously referenced Golden Age scoring. This connects Raiders to 1930s adventure serials and classic melodrama. Silence and timing. Williams knows when not to score. The swordsman gag. Quiet suspense before chaos. Indy climbing the summer and sizes of Wilden boils will read the pictures back with the means of the film. Behind-the-scenes anecdotes. Expanded. Tom Selleck was Spielberg's first choice, but was contractually bound to Magnum PI. Harrison Ford was initially not considered because Lucas didn't want to reuse his Star Wars star. The swordsman scene was improvised due to illness. 7,000 plus snakes were used in The Well of Souls. Spielberg agreed to direct partly because Lucas promised he could later direct a James Bond film. Raiders has Bond DNA. The boulder was fiberglass and surprisingly light, but shot with forced perspective to appear massive. The film was shot under tight budget constraints. Spielberg delivered on schedule and under budget. Budget, box office, and awards expanded context. Budget, approximately $18, $20 million worldwide gross. $389 million, huge success for 1981. Highest grossing film of 1981. 4 competitive wins: film editing, art direction, sound, visual effects, plus Special Achievement Award, sound effects editing. Nominated for Best Picture and Best Director. It later entered the U.S. National Film Register. Final analysis. Why Raiders still works. The genius of Raiders of the Lost Ark lies in balance. Practical stunts plus mythic storytelling. Humor plus danger. Romance plus brutality. Real history plus supernatural misery. The music elevates the action into legend. The characters ground spectacle and emotion. The pacing wastes nothing. Nearly every scene moves plot forward or deepens character. It is a film constructed with classical precision but modern energy. 40-plus years later, the Raiders mark still signals adventure instantly. And that final image, the Ark disappearing into a warehouse of secrets, reminds us some mysteries are meant to remain powerful.